95% of startups fail. Most of them spend too much time and money going in the wrong direction because they're not focused on their customers. My name is Grace, and I'm the co-founder of Javelin.com. After working with thousands of entrepreneurs around the world, we've identified a new process that dramatically increases the success of new businesses, the same process used by today's most successful startups and accelerators. We've distilled this process into a simple set of tools you can use to turn your ideas into reality. Javelin. In this video, my co-founder Trevor will use Javelin to test his own idea. It's an app that helps esports teams research their competition.
In this series, we're going to show you how to take an idea and turn it into a successful business. My name is Trevor Owens and I'm the co-founder of Javelin.com, the all-in-one platform for innovators to start successful businesses. Esports is expected to be a $2.4 billion business by 2020. The best business ideas start from a problem that you have experienced yourself. 2 years ago, I got into esports as the co-owner of Gankstars, the #1 mobile esports organization in North America. To prepare for an esports competition, practicing is not enough. You need to study your competition and come up with strategies to beat them. For our team, this process was very time-consuming and disorganized. So I created a simple tool for our players and analysts to keep track of all of our competitive videos and organize the process of competitive research and strategic preparation. This tool was useful for our team, but I'm not sure if others will find it useful, and more importantly, be willing to pay for it. We're going to take this idea through the Javelin method, starting with the customer, then moving on to the problem, and in the end, focusing on the solution. Our goal is to turn this idea into a $5,000 per month business within 1 month. Let's jump into Javelin. Choose a stage and Javelin will guide you. Problem exploration is where we start with a new idea. We want to figure out who our customers are and the biggest problem they need solved. We start by defining our customer segment. This idea is for competitive esports teams, but that actually represents several different segments. The first is players, the second is analysts, and the third is coaches. The problem is the same for all three, staying organized when studying competitive videos. Now we need to estimate the pain level and the feedback cycle, or how quickly we can get feedback from these segments. For players, they're not the ones preparing the strategies, so this is a daily, mild problem. For analysts, it's really a pain for them to stay organized, so this is a daily, major problem. For coaches, they're also not the ones preparing the strategies, so for them, it's a weekly, mild problem. Among these three segments, I could interview 20 analysts within a few days. However, for the others, it would take a week or longer. Based on these guesses, we should target analysts first. So let's start interviews. The learning objective here is to determine if analysts care enough about this problem for it to be a successful business. If analysts don't care enough, we will need to pivot or say goodbye to this idea forever. Javelin gives us an interview script. When doing interviews, the key is to get facts, not feedback. Feedback will lead us down the wrong path because people like to be optimistic. If you ask me how often I like to go to the gym, I would tell you every day. But if you ask me how many times I went to the gym last month, the answer is 0 times. Facts will tell us the truth about a business's viability. For these interviews, I'm going to ask each analyst what they do on a weekly basis and how many hours they spend on each activity. Then I'm going to ask them what their biggest challenge is. I'm not going to lead them. I'm going to see if what I expected them to say is what they actually say. If my expectation is wrong, then my idea is flawed. So that is all we need to do to prepare for interviews. Now join me in finding customers to interview and we will hear if this idea solves a real problem. We will use my personal network and social media to find people to interview. They will give us a phone call through Javelin and Javelin will record these interviews and then turn the recordings into text so that we can easily revisit and review the interviews later to find the patterns.
In the following interviews, Trevor gets invalidated 3 times before everything changes. It's a frustrating process, but getting your ideas invalidated is good. It gets you closer to building the right business for the right customers. Watch how Trevor conducts his interviews and learns from his data so you can do it too.
Hello, hello, hello. Is this Max? Great, man. Thanks for taking the time to do an interview. So tell me a little bit about your background in the space of esports. How much time do you spend on this job on a weekly basis?
Per week, I would say about 15 to 20 hours.
What does that 15 to 20 hours per week consist of? What different activities?
When I have a tournament, I look at the players and I just write notes down. Basically, I have to introduce the tournament, introduce the players, the teams, and like speculate a little bit what they're going to be playing. I watch also VODs. I watch other casters, not only Vainglory, on other games to try and improve my own casting.
How much time do you spend watching video or VODs versus other sources of preparation? What are those other sources?
Basically, I watched the whole thing. So like if there was VGL, for example, that was coming out, I'd watch the entire like 4 or 5 hours of it. So that would take a lot of time in the entire like 15-20 hours. I'd do that maybe like twice a week.
What do you do to keep yourself organized, or to organize the process that you do when you're preparing for a tournament?
I'm not really I'm not really organized really. It's just like, okay, I feel like working my casting, I've got free time.
So overall, what is the biggest challenge being a tournament analyst?
I would say like having a style that sticks with you and having personality. That's because like when you cast, if you've got a personality, it mustn't be flat or anything. So every day, even if you had a bad day or a good day, you must try and be even out all the time.
So is preparing for a tournament, studying video, something that you feel you have enough time to do, or is it something that you feel like you wish you had more time to prepare?
No, I have more than enough time. Like per week, I put easily maybe 10 hours in it. It's just when I don't have anything scheduled, or when I'm eating, I just jump on it and I just watch it. I don't have to force myself to watch it because it's enjoyment too. It's matches, but also I just take a few notes.
Definitely not our target customer. That was pretty much what I would call a strikeout. Doesn't have the problem that we're looking to solve. He doesn't worry about being organized. He has plenty of time to get his work done, and preparing for tournaments is not a pain, it's enjoyable to him. So he's more concerned about his vocal delivery and personality on screen when he's at a tournament than he is with the research. Halfway into the interview, I started to get really frustrated because he didn't have any problem. And so I started to lead him a little bit, which is something that you really should avoid doing. And even though I was leading him, he still didn't have any problem. Okay, and what about a problem where you're actually working on like something that takes a lot of time, that you're actually working on streamlining or making it take less of your time?
Well, not really. I haven't thought of that for the moment, but I'm just like...
Okay, so going forward, I'm going to stay away from tournament analysts or casters, and I'm really going to focus on analysts that work with pro teams. Because I think working hands-on with players, the problem that they're going to have is going to be what we're wanting to solve. How many hours per week do you spend as an analyst/coach?
I basically dropped most of my hobbies and everything, 7 hours a day or something. Whenever we didn't have training, I was watching VODs.
So during that 7 hours per day, what activities do you actually do?
As I'm mostly an analyst for Nova now, I guess I'll mostly be theory crafting and watching VODs, scouting on other teams and stuff.
Okay, so you said you do a lot of theory crafting and watching VODs. So tell me what your process is for watching VODs, coming up with theories and strategies for your players to use.
For watching VODs, I'm mostly looking for patterns when I'm watching the enemies. When I see them do something that seems odd to me several times, I note it down and make my team realize about it and find a way to counter it, for example, or abuse it.
So out of the 7 hours per day, how many hours are spent watching video versus the number of hours spent testing strategies in the game by playing?
It always depends. For example, in Fnatic, we had like 4 hours a day of training, basically half of that. And after that, basically, when I woke up, I started watching VODs.
Out of 5 days in a week, how many days will the scrimmages be recorded by someone or you or yourself and uploaded to YouTube for saving or later review?
It depends. It's mostly if we just get a perfect example of something, then we would record it.
Okay, so what is the biggest challenge being an analyst?
Getting your thought process through to the players. As analysts, you think out of the box a lot. You're basically throwing numbers at people who are oftentimes just playing by instinct. So getting it communicated over is the hardest part for an analyst, I think.
So he spends a lot of time testing out strategies in the game through playing and through attending scrimmages live. But he doesn't do things like in a spreadsheet or a formal environment. He's not writing out essays. He doesn't have his own blog. It was a little bit closer, but still no problem there. We're going to continue to do more interviews. We have 8 more to do. Next, we have an interview with someone who is in my opinion, a much different analyst from this one. So the next person we're going to interview is actually a physics major at Cambridge University. I've seen some of her work. She really goes deep into the spreadsheets. I'm thinking that this is the type of person that's really going to have the problem that we want to solve. Someone who is going to be more into the numbers of strategic analysis. Okay, so break down for me what activities you do as an analyst and which ones take up the most time.
Well, to be honest, like the most time-consuming parts was basically attending scrims to watch the team members and see how they play, because they scrim every night for at least 4 hours. So I would attend for 2 hours.
So do you watch videos of other teams to study their strategies?
Not really.
So what is the biggest challenge of being an analyst?
Communicating with the team and getting them to kind of like understand the ideas that you want to bring across.
At this point, we've had 3 interviews and not a single one has had the problem we're trying to solve. So I thought this was going to be a slam dunk. I thought this idea was going to be very easy to validate, and that's turning out not to be the case at all. So for this past analyst, she doesn't spend any time watching videos, just attending the team's scrimmages and doing pure statistical work. 3 interviews, no one has this problem. However, we've only done 3, so we have to do another 7 interviews. Right now I feel like there's not very much hope for my idea, but we'll find out by doing more interviews. I've been trying to set up another interview with an analyst that I worked with at Gangstars. He's a really good analyst. He also worked on this platform that I developed with me, so he has some really great feedback as to the value of the platform. We've been messaging back and forth. He said he recently switched to more theoretical analysis, so he doesn't have a use for the platform anymore. Depending on what type of analyst the person is, it could be more valuable according to him. For gameplay-based analysts, watching VODs is the most time-consuming activity. In this situation, the app is really valuable to make reviewing video more efficient. But the most valuable part is only if a team has multiple analysts working together on gameplay review, so they don't repeat each other's work. He said it could be more useful if the platform allowed people to watch videos together in real time, like a site called Rabbit. I haven't heard of this site before, so I'm going to check it out and also see if it comes up in any future interviews. He recommended I speak with another analyst on his team who does more gameplay analysis. So I just sent him a message and we're going to set something up in a couple hours to hear what he has to say. Right now we have another interview with someone who is a former pro player turned coach, and I've seen some of his work before, so I know that he's no stranger of analysis. Let's see what he has to say. Hey man, thanks for taking the time. So Javelin work okay for you?
It worked first try for me on Chrome.
So how many hours per week were you working as coach?
Mondays through Fridays, we had 2 blocks, both 2 hours. There was a 30-minute break in between, and then an hour after, we did VODs and a team meeting after that.
What videos would you watch?
We'd watch at least like one game that we thought was the most important or that we learned the most from.
What is the biggest challenge being a coach?
Trying to figure out a way to fix our specific problem, not so much play, but just personality thing. None of the players were naturally born leaders, naturally talkative people. It took a lot to try and find out a system for how we'd communicate in game.
For NRG, what was the coaching and analyst staff?
It was just myself and then the 3 players.
I think that was a really great interview. Even though it didn't validate the problem that we're trying to solve, he came up with a completely different direction that I hadn't thought of. He spends a lot of time doing gameplay review and working with the players hands-on. What he wanted was something like a smart board where he could watch live with his team at the same time over the internet, but they could draw different plays and circle different things, and they could use it just to communicate better. So when you're reviewing VODs, how do you stay organized and how do you keep your notes? What's your process like?
I would first watch the game at least once or twice, and I would figure out certain points in the game where I see something happen. I would mark down that play when it happens and then rewind and then all of the setup for that certain play and how the game got to the point where something like that could happen.
You said that you would look for a specific point in the game, you would make a note of it, and then you rewind. Can you tell me how you would actually physically do that in the YouTube UI?
We'd use this thing called Rabbit, where I can share my screen to the players and everything. Use that to physically do it.
And what do you think of Rabbit?
It's definitely not the best option. It's laggy at times, takes a bit to get started up. If there was a better solution to use, then I'd prefer it.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being outstanding, what would you rate Rabbit?
6.
Would NRG pay for something that was an alternative to Rabbit?
It would depend on the price. Most likely, if it's easy to use, if it lets me draw on it, then for sure.
Tell me more what you'd want to do.
It's not so much watching like a video, but an interactive thing that I can personally make and then, go through it at the same time and everything.
Keep going, keep going.
Something like a smart board, but that's on the computer and I can just like share that screen instead of them being here like physically. If we had the option to let people that are watching also interact with it, we swap who's in control and then they would give their certain opinions and they would be able to draw on it and everything.
I think that was a really interesting idea, and as soon as he explained that idea, the first thing I did is I want to jump into pricing, because if this is a different direction that we plan to go, I want to know, are they going to pay for it and how much? And I'm going to try and compare the two different paths that we could take. The original path I wanted to take, and then the path that he suggested. And so how much do you think NRG would pay for something like that monthly?
They'd probably be okay with anywhere from like 50 to 100.
The big issue with this idea is actually the implementation cost of it, because it's much more complicated to create something like a smart board on top of a YouTube video than it is to just create the system that I've created where you can organize and watch. So I'm going to have to look at how much they're willing to pay and also what it's going to take to implement it. So I have to do some more thinking on that, and we still have a bunch of more interviews to do to figure out if that path is going to be solving a bigger problem for our target market. The analyst that I used to work with, he recommended I talk to someone else on his team who is more of a gameplay analyst, and he thought this person is probably going to have the problem that we're looking to solve. So he's ready to jump on a call now, and let's see what he has to say. So right now, are you a coach or an analyst?
I am both. Majority of being a coach. I basically get all the information that Viziox gets, and then I get some of my own, but I apply that all to just gameplay, and I just, help the team overall with just like coaching methods. I have like 80% coach, 20% analyst.
What is the most time-consuming, challenging, or annoying part of doing gameplay review?
Accessibility, for sure. There isn't a single source or at least general website, no collective place that I can go to find all the VODs available. No collective place that I can go to find all the VODs available from past or future videos of professional vainglory, like the show matches. Resources in general are a pain in the ass right now.
So is that a solvable problem, or is the nature of this just something that's a difficult part of doing your job?
I think it's pretty solvable.
So what would be the solution to that?
Either make a website, make an app, make something accessible that like puts everything together. I like it. I like it a lot. Can you make your own account, make your own new videos, and add your own users to your own like separate clients, separate servers?
If I find in the rest of the interviews that people would find value in this, it solves a problem for them, then I'm going to build this so that you can set up your own private area that only your team can access.
That would be like super useful, yeah. If I knew of this app and I understood that what you said could happen on it, I would definitely use this like almost all the time with the team, because like communication between the team, this would fit the need for that. Like I wouldn't have to post like, oh, here's this YouTube link on Discord, go to this time, everyone ready to watch it, 1, 2, ready, go. I would just put the markers on each video and then send the link over to whoever needs to watch it with me, and I just say, okay, click this moment, 3, 2, 1, go, watch it, click this other moment, 3, 2, 1, go, and it take a lot of the headache out of it. And even with people that have a shitty internet, you don't have to be like, oh wait, my thing's loading or whatever.
So tell me more, what would you use this for?
Just communication with everyone in the team, and it'd be a lot easier to like make like homework assignments basically, like, yo, watch this thing, I left it here, and everyone has a link to it. No one can have an excuse to not watch it. You can see who's active, how often people are working, how often people are doing their shit.
And when you say homework, who is that homework for? Is it for the players or the analysts?
Mostly for the players, and communication between the analysts. That way we'd be like, yo, check this part out and let me know what you think. And then for people, especially in different time zones that have it like hard for them, like if we're 3 hours apart or whatever, and I have to sleep early one night, or if I'm like gone for a weekend, then I don't have to have like 5 or 7 different apps open to make something work within communication. Say I'm not going to be here for a Scrum week and I need to watch all these videos, I would just be like, yo, put all of our scrims onto this, organize it in a way that makes it better than something else like Google Drive. For efficiency and like accessibility, it would be a bit better and easier to use than Google Drive.
Is this something that the Tribe org would pay for? What about like $10 a month?
I'd say that's pretty easy.
What would the product have to do for an org to pay more for it, like $30 to $50 a month? What value would it have to provide?
A majority of that would be design and response from whoever the developer team will be. 2 days response or like even a day response, then that would make me want to pay $19.99, maybe like $29.99.
What if you could make a playlist where you have like 5 different videos and you want to take certain parts from each of those 5 different videos into a playlist? Is that the core of the functionality that you're looking for?
Yes, actually. Yes, that sounds super satisfying. If I could click a button and it shows me all the videos, that'd be like nutworthy. Holy shit. That took so much time from me, and if I could relieve that from the players, that'd probably get them to want to watch it. Like, that would be so good. Ugh.
So the issue of finding videos and organizing them together, how frequent of a problem is that for you?
Very frequent. I'm constantly trying to organize videos. Most of my time is spent organizing. That way, a majority of my time later can be spent just watching. I don't ever want to watch, find. I just want to find all in one place and know that I can set aside time to watch it. Goddamn, if only there was one place. Like, I asked myself that so many times.
So is that a daily problem?
Once competitive start, that's when it's going to be daily.
Okay, and so would you say that problem is mild, as in nagging or annoying? Moderate, as in uncomfortable? Major, as in interferes significantly? Or severe, as in disabling?
Major. Definitely major. Definitely not going to be close to disabling, but definitely major. Like, it's more than a headache. It's like a barrier.
Okay, wow. So this is what an early adopter looks like. This guy was literally foaming at the mouth for the solution. And he had the problem. It was like obvious very early on in the interview. His biggest problem was finding videos, organizing them, and doing competitive analysis. Compared to our other interviews, key difference with this individual was that he's doing a lot more competitive analysis. He's looking for a lot of strategies and examples that people are using in-game. He also has a team of other analysts to support him. He wants to give his players homework so that they have some accountability. He was so pumped. Listen to what he asked me. Before we end here, is there anything that just like pops into your mind? Anything else we should discuss before ending here?
If this were to continue, how sure are you that you want it to be like a solo project and something that you own 100%?
It's always a good sign when your potential customer either wants to join your team or invest in your project. That's how you know that you're on the right track. So we've done 6 interviews so far. It's been about 7 hours. And for these interviews, I dug really deep. It was about 40 minutes to an hour for each interview, but we've been super efficient. It doesn't take very long to find these interviews. I only sent out some messages this morning, and then I've already gotten a bunch of people to interview. Moving forward, I want to really target my search to find people like the last interview that we did. I want to find people where they're doing a lot of competitive analysis, researching videos, and they have a support staff. So we want to focus more on coaches, and hopefully we can find that this is a problem that not just one individual has, but actually more coaches in the community have this problem as well. Okay, so we have another interview with a coach. Let's see what he has to say. So as a coach, what is the biggest challenge?
Being a team leader and being like a role model for your team and like showing them how you need to approach the game, how you need to think about the game. And not just that, but like out of game stuff, like how they should be conducting themselves.
What is the hardest part in terms of doing preparation, doing research to come up with strategies?
Finding the right way to communicate with everybody.
That interview didn't really hit the mark, but it's been 8 hours of doing interviews. I'm getting really tired here, so I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to come back later to re-listen to some of the interviews and start really going after the patterns so that we can figure out what to do next. Even though I learned a lot during the interviews last night, I learned even more today reviewing them. We can listen to the exact words and emotions used in the interviews and share it with advisors and business partners to get a more objective opinion. That makes this a science. In the first round, we did 7 interviews. We recommend that for startup teams, you do 5 interviews per team member. Our first 3 interviews were invalidated, and it was frustrating, but it actually makes all of our future efforts easier. Now we know exactly who is not our early adopter. In my 4th interview, I got some valuable insights from my former colleague at Gangstars, who had used my MVP before and then stopped using it. In our 5th interview, a pivot opportunity presented itself, and in the 6th interview, we found our first early adopter. This was not scripted at all, it's actually how it happened. In fact, the way this happened is a sign that we're on the right path. In 8 years, I have never seen a team that didn't get some invalidation in the first round. Most teams who do this right, it takes until the 2nd or 3rd round to really find the first early adopter. I've done this process myself more times than I can count, and we've taken thousands of startups through this process in our workshop. We identified the pattern by following the ones that built successful businesses. If you don't get any invalidation in the first round, you might have confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when you only look at the data that confirms your idea, and you ignore the data that says your idea is bad. You might also be asking leading questions. We only showed you the key parts of my interviews because those interviews were 40 to 60 minutes each. I actually went really deep in the interviews to make sure I was testing my assumptions. We went really broad in this first round. We interviewed a tournament analyst, we interviewed coaches who had formerly acted as analysts, and even though I've been in this industry and I had the problem myself, I learned a ton. The most important thing that I hope you learn in this video is how to ask the right questions and how to identify early adopters. Notice how in my interviews, I asked broad, open-ended questions and focused on the facts. I also slightly changed the questions as we went along to be more specific about the information I wanted to learn. About 30 to 50% of your interview should be scripted. The other question should be based on your customers' answers so that you can go deeper. When we found our first early adopter, it was obvious compared to the interviews when we were invalidated. Now, let's look at Javelin. These are our interviews. You can see most people had a little bit of pain. 5 out of 5 is our early adopter. These hearts come from a simple set of questions you can answer in Javelin, and we help you determine if that person is an early adopter. We can open these interviews to see our notes, and we can listen to the recording and view the transcript. We can see that the transcript is split by who's speaking, so it's really easy to find important parts. The transcription is done by AI, so it's about 80 to 90% accurate. But we can go in and click play on any specific part. Then we can edit those parts if we need to. Here's where we create the heart rating. All we do is answer a simple set of questions. We can also see the overall stats for the whole interview set. We did 7 interviews. The average heart rating was 1.5. Most people only somewhat care about this problem. It's not enough. We really need a majority of yes to move forward in the same direction. Only one person has searched for a solution to this. That's a key problem for us. Most people will interview again, which I think indicates that the general space is good, but it doesn't mean this idea is good. Based on these stats, we can see that we need to pivot. And as I said after our 6th interview with our first early adopter, we need to focus on coaches who have at least 2 competent analysts helping them. That's the pivot. It's not a huge one in this situation. For other people doing this process, you may need to pivot in a bigger way than this. Next, we go back to our hypotheses to start the next round of interviews. Here we can see that I segmented the market in the wrong way. That's fine. This is a process of evolution. The problem we want to solve is actually for teams and not individuals like I thought. So we can update the fact that for analysts, this is not a daily major problem. It's more of a daily mild problem. And we can add another segment. Our new hypothesis is coaches with 2 or more competent analysts have a problem organizing gameplay review. For them, it's a daily major problem. And it will probably take us a few days or up to a week to interview enough coaches who fit this criteria. So I'm going to do another 1 or maybe 2 interview sets, a total of at least 15 interviews. If the next round is not validated with our updated customer hypothesis, we're going to pivot again. We might even pivot to do the smartboard idea like our 5th interview suggested. We cannot know in advance where our interviews and pivots will lead us. That's the purpose of this process. The key thing you must take away from this video is that this is a process of evolution. We do 1 set of interviews, then we review and evolve our idea. Then we do another set of interviews and we review and evolve our idea again. We don't do this all in one big bang. It's several small experiments that each move us in the direction that is closer to a successful business. This only took 1.5 days. We have 28.5 days left to get this business to $5,000 per month in revenue. I will continue to do interviews on my own until we validate a problem with a specific customer segment. In the next episode, I will catch you up on my progress and show you how we validate our solution with Javelin's landing pages.
When I get it, I ain't never going back again. 100